love you telling the story of how horrified you were. This is not a law enforcement problem as much of a desire not to enforce the law. Because the problem with hacking comes down to it's about people. And most of the time, hacks occur because a credential was given away by a human being. The hacker really has free access into your system.
Mark Stross, I'm honored to be here with you today. I'm really excited about everything we have going on and to present to the world who you are and what you're doing today.
Well, thank you. In fact, we have a little visitor here, my cat, Toby, who's decided he would like to share the limelight and he wants to share with you his career. But thank you, Kim. It is so super wonderful to actually have you here with me today in person because most of the time we work so remotely. You know, Kim, I remember the day when we were both working on a different project when we met for the very first time. And I remember when you first told me about your dreams and your aspirations and what you were doing. And you were a social media director and you were sensational at that. But then you got into your backstory, into some of your motivations as to what makes you tick as a human being. And that's my life definitely changed. After meeting you, it was never the same since. I just want to thank you for bringing me into your world. I am extremely excited that at my age, I'm able now to teach. And I now am fulfilling the role as teacher. You know, when I think of teaching, I think what's so important about teaching people is it's a payback system. It is a way to guarantee that future generations, of course, will have it better, I hope, than we do. And in order for us to achieve that, I think there has to be a generosity of heart. You have to give back. You have to be fair-facing, and you have to decide to come forward. You, through your actions, have taught me that.
Thank you. That's an honor. It's been amazing to see you evolve, not only personally, but in your career with what you've been doing behind the scenes for America for the last 20 something years with ANC and your career as a technologist. There's so much that you've created and invented that America is unaware who's behind that. And it's amazing watching you now step into the limelight and even start your own path in educating people and also teaching people how to safeguard themselves while enjoying the benefits of technology. And as you know, it's something I'm very passionate about in not only the implications of technology and how we should protect ourselves as users, as humans, but specifically the implications it has on children and future generations. So thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for the free information, the education, and the love that you're sharing with the world through unpacking your knowledge and simplifying it for the American population.
Kim, when you first told me about what's going on with our children, I didn't believe you. I didn't. And when I started to look at the reporting, the amount of reports of abuse, the numbers blew me away. For the audience to understand what I'm talking about, I understand that law enforcement is not capable of protecting everyone. It's an impossible job. But when you realize there's millions of cases, predators, and of predator type activities occurring every single year, and when you look at the stats that less than 2,000 cases are prosecuted and only 1,500 people have gone to prison, I was left with only one conclusion. I had to step into the fray. I have to protect the children. And I understand that I don't have, and I want to make it clear to the audience, I today am just starting doing this. I don't have all the solutions right now, but I am putting together information, I am learning, and I intend to teach as many Americans as I can how we can all be just an amazing country in which we listen to each other, in which we share information, which we're not paranoid and stop listening and start being hateful. And I believe that it starts with something we all can agree on, our kids.
Absolutely.
Can we stop politics when we're talking about our kids? Can we be non-denominational when we're talking about our kids? Can we start to realize they really are our future? This is not a subject that politics should ever enter into.
Correct.
And from my perspective, I've had a bit of criticism already over this, is where are you going to take the message? I want to make it clear to this audience, to anyone and everyone who will listen.
That's so important. Absolutely, because to your point, technology is not something we can avoid. And what I appreciate most about your approach is how balanced you are. And coming as a technologist into the scene, you're promoting and protecting and producing America's technology. So it's not about let's live under a rock and pretend like this will go away. It's about how can we experience safe, private digital experiences while also ensuring the future generations are safeguarded. Let's not make dumb decisions today that not only impact us, but will impact future generations. And a huge part of that is the awareness. We have to start with awareness. I say this often. Awareness is step one. It's acknowledgement of the problem. If we don't acknowledge, then we can't implement safeguards and logical solutions. So step one is awareness, and step two is taking action. So I appreciate what you've done to simplify this for people so that they understand it without just fear mongering. It's not about fearing it, it's about understanding it and taking action to implement solutions. Because in general, a lot of these problems are solvable. And to your point, dialogue is so important. If we approach this from a balanced perspective of this is the reality and these are the safeguards we can implement, and if we work together, we can find solutions and we can protect children.
What was interesting in one of the discussions we did for Veterans for Child Rescue, one of your nonprofits that I'm very honored to be associated with, was when I heard from regular families, from people that were just asking, well, how do I protect my child? What is the first step I take? And what I realized is I could go to ChatGPT and give people 10 suggestions tomorrow, but it is obvious that whatever is out there, whatever information we're using right now is not working. I mean, really going to be candid. We have more people that are now facing problems with addiction, digital addiction. I face my own issues with it. We are not willing to really discuss that as a society to admit that most of us are addicted to our digital devices. Therefore, in order for us to really make hard decisions of how to protect our children, it means it will affect our freedoms of people who enjoy their addiction. What I realize why this is so complicated and hard is I have to convince Americans to give up something they like.
Maybe even are addicted to. And that's not easy for anyone to recognize, but it takes us all having an honest discussion about what it is, what we need to do, and then take action to implement that.
Exactly. My message is not to make anyone feel good. It's not to make anyone feel bad. It's to bring reality to the table and to have us all work with it. Work with the clay we've got. And the clay here is America right now is doing a disservice to its young future generation. Exploitation is occurring. And when that exploitation occurs, it weakens the country. It weakens all of us. When you destroy families, ultimately a society eventually disintegrates.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the biggest introductions that we both had simultaneously to that world, and just to give the audience some background, is I worked in social media, marketing, and branding for the last 12 years. That's been my specialty. About 3 years ago, it came on my radar that children were being targeted, and specifically, there was a massive problem in the United States with child trafficking and exploitation. So that was something that I personally couldn't deal with in terms of ignoring it or pretending like that wasn't happening, especially while observing that there was a massive lack of solutions and public awareness. So while intelligent individuals like you and I were kept unaware, and I believe by design, about the truth of what's going on, there are also a lot of ways that children are being viciously targeted on the internet. So an operation to have adults pose as children on the internet in order to identify predators and ultimately arrest those who were trying to target children. So as a social media expert, my strategy, what I thought I was going to have to do was not only set up a profile and do a lot of work to make it look real and have friends and posts, I thought I was going to have to go comment on people's posts and live streams and friend requests in order to get noticed. But what happened instead absolutely disgusted me, and I remember sending you live updates, because to walk the audience through this, first of all, We used an AI software to make my face look like a child, and it was alarming how accurate it looked. And for the audience to understand, I looked maybe 12 to 14 years old in these photos, just a vulnerable child sitting there like a
You
deer in
looked
the
innocent.
headlines, absolute innocence. And all that I did, and by the way, we were not using dark web apps. These were not even dating apps. These were apps from the App Store that any child can download and use to interact with their friends. And all I did was set up a profile with this baby looking child's face. And within seconds, it was just pouring predators into my DMs, into my direct messages without sending one friend request or posting anything at all. Somehow I got instantly noticed on these social media apps, and they were pouring in with all kinds of vulgar things that would be inappropriate for adults to say. But realize these ranged all the way from, hey, cutie, you're so cute, do you have a boyfriend? All the way up to the most advanced, violent pornographic things that would be inappropriate for a consensual adult relationship. So I was sending you these live updates, both as a friend and as a technologist, because I knew that this was not okay. This was not something that I'm going to allow my nephews and my niece to grow up in this world where predators have direct access to children, where they're being hunted. Children go on the internet to be informed and entertained and delighted, as they should. And we have full-grown adults that have direct access to children that are operating without limitation, seemingly without any consequence, and that are able to not only target these children, but send them all kinds of inappropriate images and videos and content that these tech platforms are very aware of, can absolutely identify. So the horrifying thing was how bad it was, how aggressive it was, and how many predators. So in the 2.5 days that I was pretending to be a child on the internet, I probably chatted with hundreds of predators. I saw hundreds of what we call inappropriate images or harmful content. And it was alarming to me not only to experience this as an adult who can handle this type of predation, but to realize that children are being inundated with this harmful content and they cannot unsee that type of influence.
No, they can't.
So it revved up something inside of me. It lit a whole new fire. I was already passionate about the fight to protect children, but seeing this digital space where children are being hunted and seeing how technology platforms are allowing this and sometimes even profiting off this, or more importantly, failing to implement safeguards to protect children. So I shared this information with you, and we even did a live discussion about it after the operation, because it was something I felt the world needs to see, and more importantly, we need to take action. So I just can't thank you enough for what you've dedicated yourself to doing in being an educator and helping people understand the risks as well as the solutions. Because again, we're not just here to make people mad or scared. We're here to help people help themselves and help children be safeguarded against this predation so that future generations have a chance to grow up with innocence and with safeguards.
I love you telling the story of how horrified you were from the perspective. There's nothing to love about this, but there is a moment, I think, in everyone's life where you see something and you go, I have two options. I can either walk away because this thing is so horrible, or I'm going to get my hands dirty and do something. I want to share with the audience something that I found last year was really insane. At a time when, with the kind of career that I've had, and I've been so fortunate, and I just want to give a shout out to everyone at ANC. Just thank you for allowing me to dream and for the things that we've done. But in my day job, I have always been fear facing because I do these large video board projects. And if the audience wants to look up what I do in my day job, please look up anc.com. Super proud of the body of work and the team that I work with. They're amazing. But I always felt I was fear facing till I got involved with you. And then I suddenly went, wow, I don't even know what the definition of fear is. Because the story starts for me about 2 weeks prior to you doing your sting operation. And this is where the story gets wild for the audience. So I'm bebopping along in my routine, and my routine is I do a tech little show on the radio every Wednesday on a Rude Awakening show out of Maryland. And on that show, I actually highlighted the fact that I had just seen a report that people had de-aged themselves, went on social media, that literally within 30 seconds, predators were on them. And the audience, Bulldog, who's the main host of the Rude Awakening show, could not believe what I was saying. I mean, literally was doubting that this could be accurate, that this kind of perversion could occur so fast.
Mm.
And so for me, I reported on it and then I filed it away. And I didn't really think about, well, what am I going to do to get involved with this at this point? I was reeling from last year from the solar wind hacks, from realizing that, you know, you can never predict, you can't predict any of your infrastructure beyond slow down a cyber criminal who really wants to gain access to your stuff. If they have enough willpower, they'll break through. One of the things I say, and I've said many times, is I'm given huge projects to protect. All I can do is not guarantee they will never be hacked, but do everything in my power to slow down a hack and make sure we cut the hack off after we discover it. Because the problem with hacking comes down to it's about people. And most of the time, hacks occur because a credential was given away by a human being. So the hacker really has free access into your system. They haven't scaled the wall or defeated your security. They've just entered your security domain through someone's password. When I was looking at cybersecurity, I was always looking at it from kind of a zeros and ones problem. If I solve the technology, make better firewall, create better security for the products that I put out into the world, I would solve the problem. But then you come along. And what I realized was what happened to those kids, the speed in which the predators come on to the kids was alarming. But there is something that I think is 10 times more alarming than anything you've suggested and anything that I've just talked about. Why? If I go online, just go to Facebook and talk about COVID, how fast will you see a little blurb underneath your post about COVID and about correcting the record? Go on YouTube and you do a video that even suggests January 6th. Instantaneously, your video is demonetized, and in addition to that, it will have a little blurb underneath about January 6th. So how come? This is what alarmed me, everyone. This is what made me take Kim's story and really start to chew on it. This is what started making me go, wow, this is a solvable problem. Whoa, this is actually an intentional problem. Whoa, this is not a law enforcement problem as much of a desire not to enforce the law. For the audience, because I don't like ever working with conspiracies, because conspiracies are great, but a conspiracy usually means you cannot prove the fact that you're offering forward. So how come did Kim have men talking about their body parts, talking about her age? She had to confirm in order to make a bust the age of the predator and her age 3 times, I believe, if I got that right, Kim. You did all that. And then they were able to take photographs of their body parts, show them to you, talk about body parts, etc. And the algorithms never capture them.
Absolutely. The alarming thing to your point, there were so many instances that the technology platforms for sure could identify the fact that these predatory adults were flooding the inbox of a child, sending harmful images, explaining their intent, their graphic, violent intent with this child, and the response of the child, and how we had to make them aware of our age and of our innocence. So to your point, when I realized how intentional it was, when I realized I was chatting with hundreds of predators during these 2.5 days, and that I wasn't being blocked, they weren't being blocked.
Mm-hmm.
They were operating without limitation, and how fluent they were in this predation. how often they do this, and the fact that they're getting away with this. Now compare that to a word in your social media post they don't like, and that they can definitely identify, whether it's a public post or sent via private message. We know for sure the technology exists that can identify that content, meaning it is intentionally not being used to protect children, which also means they are intentionally profiting from that exploitation because they are profiting off that user base, off the advertisements, and all the way they monetize those platforms. That was something I could not ignore. That was something that I think we, the people, not only need to be aware of, but need to be intolerant of. And again, it begins with awareness. And the general populace is generally not aware of how bad this is. One of the aspects of your message that I appreciate so much is the message about spending time in your child's world in order to understand what they're seeing on these devices, especially when they're given unsupervised, unlimited access to the internet. There's so much information in the palm of their hands, it's overwhelming. And if we're not aware of what they're experiencing online, we're not aware of the things they can't unsee and how their innocence is being exploited and possibly ruined. Now, that's not the fault of the children who may be innocently using these apps to interact with other people that they think are children or adults that they don't realize are unsafe. Now, when we make these arrests and these prosecutions and these convictions of these predators, it sends a message not only to the public, but to other predators that they are being hunted. I would like to see our culture turn into one that is not only intolerant of the predation of children, but one that is aggressively not only advocating for the rights and safety of children, but making it impossible for predators to continue operating without limitation as they are today. Now, do you think that's possible in our near future?
Not today in the way things are set up.
Absolutely. I don't think people are aware. I know so many parents, and I'm not a parent myself, and I don't give parenting advice, and I have huge respect for parents and the insurmountable odds they're up against these days with raising kids in this crazy world. So I understand that sometimes there's a lot of positive things that can be learned and gained from technology. So that's, again, what I appreciate about your balanced approach. We're not saying don't give any access to any
Of course
technology.
not. I love
We're saying
technology.
there's a way to use it safely. And again, it starts with awareness. Awareness is such an overused term. But when it comes to the fight against child exploitation and abuse, awareness reduces the predator's ability to operate. We can at least reduce the amount of bad guys doing bad things to children. We can reduce the amount of harmful content children are experiencing online. We can reduce the amount of children that are being targeted. We can reduce the amount of bad guys getting away with this. And I think that's a big part of where we're working towards in our mission. So it's partly making sure that people are aware of what it is and what to do. And it's also holding tech platforms responsible. So whether that means in legislation and political action, whether that means actually creating software and technology that is eventually required to be used in order for safeguards to be implemented. So we understand it's a gradual approach. We understand it's not a one-size-fits-all problem. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. However, we have to start somewhere because it's not getting better. It's getting worse unless we step in to do our part.
I agree with that. So, I have a story for us to bring some levity after we talked about child predators. I mean, to make it a little lighter, but actually, there's a huge point to this. I shared with you a story yesterday, Kim, about a worldwide voyage occurring right now in the high seas. And we have a whole bunch of highly sought after influencers that have collected on this boat in the middle of the ocean. It didn't take long for the influences to turn on themselves. I'm sorry, it was the other way around. It wasn't the Discovery Channel, it was the Discovery Channel that fell out with whom. I forget who's the streaming service. But anyway, so on the Discovery Channel or whatever, they had sold programs to people. And the people owned those programs. And then, I remember now, PlayStation. So this all happened on PlayStation. So Sony has a falling out with the Discovery Channel. Now, people had actually purchased product that they owned, but because Sony took that streaming service off of their platform, the content that they purchased was taken off of their machines. So it meant that they only had purchased that content as long as Sony had a relationship with the Discovery Channel. That's insane. Because when you think of buying content, like I'm sure you go to your Apple TV or your Roku or your Android device, and it will say, do you want to buy the movie? And there are certain movies that you do want to buy. I mean, we've all perceived that you buy a movie to put into your library forever, like we used to do with CDs, DVDs, cassettes, records, the whole bit. It is bizarre that today my library has become completely digital, and it's actually happening, that shows that I want to go back and look at are gone. The idea that if I actually buy something from one of these outfits, it can be just taken away, means that honestly, we have created this new society, but we've given all the power to the corporation. And we've discovered the corporation cannot, because of their own vulnerabilities, honor their contracts. I do not want to paint them as evil. Who knows why Sony and Discovery had their falling out? But the problem is that the digital content was owned by you, but you got caught in a dispute between two superpowers, and your content was taken away because of it. What if your content could have had its rights assigned to you? And that you, just like cryptocurrency has a universal ledger, the ownership of that content was transferred to your ledger so that you could actually own that piece of content forever. That is one of the ideas to show the audience that I am thinking of the solution in the future, that I am now talking about going to try to get really powerful people to start working on. I was just at a conference with cryptocurrency programmers and a head of cryptocurrency in Texas. They were blown away by the notion because they were working on something called localized cryptocurrency wallets so that users could keep a wallet off of the general ledger in a safe, but then introduce it to the general ledger and still have it viable. So the general ledger is set in the cloud. So for the audience, to make it super simple, think of the general ledger being this bank in the cloud. But the difference between a normal bank and this general ledger is everyone can look at your bank account. Everyone can see the ledger and everyone can see who owns what in this ledger. So now imagine if you could then take your stuff from the general ledger, put it into your personal space, add stuff to it, like a suitcase, and then put the suitcase back into the general ledger. This gentleman was working on that technology so that cryptocurrency, you could travel with it. You could actually have it in your pocket. You could have a localized version, not to worry about being on the internet to transact with it. That when you wanted to transact, you'd have to have an internet connection, but you could put your device, it would connect, it would speak to the general ledger and do its thing. So then I asked this gentleman, I said, so how many transactions are you preparing for this localized general ledger thingy to actually deal with? He says, well, if it goes really big, it's a trillions of transactions. So I said, what you're saying to me, then that's nothing worse than if we would assign everyone's picture to a general ledger, right? Because we can handle trillions of transactions. And he looked at me and he goes, I think it's a little bit more, Mark, but yeah, we should be able to handle that. So this is the point. Could you imagine in a world in which we assign digital rights to people and those rights are kept with those people in a general ledger, just like with crypto, for the rest of their life? But now imagine that child or young adult makes a mistake. And this is where I bring it back to the predators. Should your child's mistake last their lifetime? Should your mistake last a lifetime? And more importantly, why should Facebook or any other social media platform, Meta, Google, Apple, gosh, Microsoft, and we can go deeper. These companies have so much data that they now store for us. And they're trying to sell us in this idea that we cannot possibly own our data anymore, that we have to pay them to store it, that it's so much easier for us to give up our data and give it to them, and they'll take care of it. But the problem is that they've also designed a system that is the cruelest, the worst societal system ever, because it's a system that, frankly, doesn't give anyone the ability to make a mistake.
Right. So a big part of the reason why we should own our data is so that we have control of it. Is that correct?
Yes, there's money, they created the algorithms, they created the platform, there's that. They have a very selfish relationship with us. They basically go, give us our content, we own it, and we will give you whatever we decide to give you for that content.
They
You
say
can't even
all.
negotiate with what that value is because they assign that value, and it's a buffet, one price fits all, and you just have to accept the buffet. There's no other. I mean, that's all you get. Well, the problem with that is again, it doesn't help out that just like MySpace, it's flatlined. Its growth is tapped, guys. And there's a simple reason for it. There's a finite amount of people on planet Earth. So these corporations that we're talking about are now tapping into the finality of their journey. So what do they have to do in order to actually continue to grow? They have to create products, they have to create services because they can't get more users, so they have to add and extract from those users more money if they want to continue to grow. If we can make the system of ownership be exactly the same as banking has been, and that ownership can be traded and bartered, but the difference is people are trading, not corporations trading. We would literally create an exchange in which those people would be making money, and there could be a lot of money be made. For example, you make a mistake. I don't think it is unreasonable for there to be a small charge to take your data down from a site, but you should be able to do it. In other words, I'm not against these entities. I understand how we got here. There was no conspiracy making the cloud become what it is today. This was literally as jumping onto new technologies and realizing the virtualization of technology would actually make data more secure. We've made data 100 times more secure by putting it into the cloud. And server farms are far more efficient than people trying to house data in their local companies, back room. So the millions of reasons why big data is great, but where big data has now has actually changed. It's changed from a movement of holding on to our data for a good thing to now giving us no way out because it is the god of data. And now the human, and the human that can mess up, the human that can make a mistake, no longer is involved in any of the history of their data. Because in the old days, we used to make transcripts on paper and leather, and we would make a transcript and we'll put it into a library, or we would it would be held in a castle. Or if you were writing about your family story, it would be an ever-ending, novel, and that would be given to the next generation. Today, that has now gone into the cloud, and this is a public activity. When you die and you take down your site, we still haven't solved as a society what happens to the content of someone who's dead. If that content's really good, shouldn't the heirs actually be benefiting from that content? Not. And in that device, their whole world's in it. And then the device actually teaches them how they are there to feed the device, like the social media and the kids on this cruise. And by feeding the device, they're making the device and all the people behind the scenes money because their content is owned by the people they're making the content for. But at the end of the day, what happens to the people that have put all of their heart and soul into this system? What is left? And this is
Right.
where I come back to love. If we give our whole human existence, our whole creation, our whole creative energy to social media, and that goes into digital archives, and that is owned by other people. And I know this is a very deep part of what we do. And today we're going deeper than I've gone in a long time. Then what is the worth of our life? Now I know this is a deeper one than I just want to tell you, we're not going to keep it this deep normally. But if we don't own anything and everything's owned by the corporations, our best creativity, our best output, for me, that's a very weird prospect of owning nothing.
Right. That's absolutely true. You know, you've talked a lot about influencers and their influence, and what is that on society today? So, to the topic of protecting children, children are very easily influenced, especially when someone looks cool, acts cool, does things that are entertaining. Kids see that, and these days they try to model that behavior. Now, what I see as a major problem is that a lot of these influencers are simply chasing the fame, the likes, the engagement, and I'm not faulting them for that. But I am saying that I believe they have a responsibility with that influence.
Yes, and you see, this is the one issue where you and I have had a lot of discussions about this because by the mere definition of an influencer, you're trying to influence someone to do something. I'm trying to create a societal change. I'm not trying to make you change your habit, sell you something. What I'm trying to do is trying to get all of us to start working towards the same goal. And I would like to use all the cool jobs, applications, projects that I've worked on to hand back some of the wisdom that I've learned to everyone that I'm speaking to today. But what I don't want is for us to do the inverse of that, which happens too often today, which is you like my face, you like my voice, you want to be part of the clan, you create a clique, you create a gang of people, and we're all together because it all feels good. Well, my job makes me feel really good. And I really don't need, at this point in my life, to do any more missions because my day job is incredibly action packed and I already have adventures enough. So to me, I'm not doing that for that reason. My job, I see it with a whole bunch of other educators, is to start massively educating Americans on how to use technology, showing them the options, showing them what the possibilities are. And I believe we collectively as a society will start choosing better choices. And anyone who says America never changes, well, that is absolutely untrue. I remember as a kid the 60s to the 70s, the 70s to the 80s, the 80s to the 90s. Now, I know for most of you, some of you won't have even been born during this period, but those periods were as different as from the 2K and from really 2010 when the smartphone became prominent. From the time the smartphone to 23, an absolute acceleration of societal change that's never been seen before in the history of humanity. And also, the acceleration of technology in this last 12-year period has been absolutely phenomenal. AI actually got 100-fold increase in its capabilities just in the last 5 years, and in fact, 3 years. So when you look at the acceleration, that's why I'm stepping into this educational role because we've got to educate people. We've got to get love into this equation and ownership and sharing with them, communicating with them, having dialogue, arguing with them, having compassion by being involved is the only weapons I think that we have left that work. You allow your child to be unhappy with you if you're protecting them. And helicopter parents, I don't honor that term.
Yeah, let's not continue making that a thing. Let's help people understand that it's their responsibility. Let's help people understand that children are vulnerable, they're sponges, and they are copying the behavior that they witness. And if we continue allowing children to be not only susceptible to this information, but inundated with it, to your point, if they don't have positive influences, all they're going to model are the trends of getting attention for doing inappropriate things
Things.
instead of beneficial things that not only enhance their skill sets, but that help them be contributing members to society. If they're used to doing things to get attention, these virtual signals that mean nothing in the real world, these hearts, these followers, these numbers that mean nothing in real life, our children's focus is misguided. And that's not their fault if that's all they know. That's all they've been taught. That's all their friends are doing. That's what they get rewarded for. That's not real life. they're unaware of the consequences and they're unaware of how that data can be used against them.
Parents, when you get involved in their world, you go into let's say you go into TikTok and you see a few of their videos. Taking out your kid and having ice cream and talking about their post and rewarding them for what you've seen on TikTok as well, and then talking to them about things you might not like, you could have a fascinating conversation with them. So the fact is, the reward system, you, the parent, should be supplying that reward, not TikTok. And I want everyone to think about that. When did we decide that we're going to give a digital device to kids and go, this will make you happy? I'm done. I don't need to deal with it. You're just going to be happy. Go, 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 go. No, 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 guys. You're supposed to make your kid happy.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the concept of happiness and connection, because I think a misconception in social media is that it helps us stay connected and interact with other people. Now, I've looked at some data and statistics about the happiness calibration of humanity in general, and I think you would agree that it's decreased since the invention or the popularity of social media. Now, the way that I would relate social media in terms of our human interaction and the way that we interact or stay connected with other humans, it's almost like when you're hungry and you need nutrients and you go and eat fast food, you may be temporarily satisfied, but your nutritional needs are not met.
Right.
Therefore, you are hungry again in 2 hours. Why? Because you are still depleted of the actual nutrients. You have consumed something that is not sustainable, it is not sustenance. So it's almost like social media is the fast food or the junk food of actual human interaction and social connection. It's not sustainable, it's not real. And if we're teaching children to focus on that, they're missing out on the real human connection.
Actually, you might have just come up with a really cool campaign there. Social media is the fast food of life,
Right, at least
of
human
relationships,
connection of
connections.
relationships,
If you want a
exactly.
genuine connection, do it with flesh and blood. When I was a kid, my dad used to play checkers with me, and he used to beat me all the time. And I used to almost hate the times you'd say, we're going to go and play checkers. And I would reluctantly go into the room, sit at the table, and just used to think it doesn't really matter how hard I fight, he'll still beat me. But my dad was aware that I was getting demoralized, but he said, I'm not going to be easy on you. I'm going to force you to finally decide that you're going to beat me. At some point, you're going to beat me. You're going to get mad enough that you're going to apply yourself to this game and beat me. It took 5 years. I beat him. I beat my father because I was learning with my father and because my father took the time to engage a crabby little boy and taught him how to be a winner. Parents, you got to do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's okay to let your child learn by failing sometimes.
Yes.
It's not a failure, it means it's the real world. It means we don't let them think that they're winning in a virtual method. We allow them to experience the real world and humans, which can sometimes be mean or unpleasant to interact with, but it teaches them the social skills they'll need to succeed and even survive in today's world. If all they experience is this virtual world and the fakeness of it, we're not teaching them to value human interaction. We're not teaching them that they need to up their game in order to be the best, in order to succeed, in order to invent new things. If we teach them that their value lies in their likes and followers and their social persona, we're not teaching them to value what's real in this world. And that's dangerous.
Totally. In fact, Kim, to wrap it up, that's why love, interaction, debate, getting a dialogue started with folks that we're talking to right now is important. And one more thing about all this is we were on an I think X radio show or something a few months back, and one of the users or one of the comments was, we recommended something, and then the user said, well, it's too slow, and immediately tried to dismiss the recommendation. And then it was funny because it only took me about 30 seconds to come back with another solution that doesn't slow them down, but it does decrease their protection a little bit. And then I thought to myself, so were we really talking to a parent who was really worried about his internet connection, or we were really talking about a parent who wanted to play games or watch porn themselves and didn't want to sacrifice any of their internet speed to protect their children. Because if the priority was pure speed, when we're talking about a 10 to 15% easement in speed for protection, and he said it's always too slow, which is, by the way, false. Mon VPNs, the good ones, are very fast. And
Right,
you can look at the pings and you get it. It is a delay. I never said it wasn't a delay, but it's very fast.
right.
But if protecting your kids means that it might slow you down, well, you, the parent, have the ability to set up two networks, one for your kids and one for yourself. But what is funny is I love the fact that as soon as we started giving people solutions, real world solutions, the first thing they did is come back and say, how come they couldn't adopt them? Because there was some inconvenience involved. Which brings me
Exactly.
back to my final note. You want to help the kids, it's going to be inconvenient. You want to love on the kids, there will be moments of inconvenience.
Mm,
But when you save your kids, you're going to have a moment of exuberance and you will be so beautifully in love with your child, yourself, life. It will be worth it. And we need
absolutely.
more love and less of this selfishness. If we're going to protect people, there are costs. Yes, your internet connection will be a little bit slower, but you're protected. And you want to know something? What's more important about protecting the children is they've got to see you care. And you need to teach them to care. So if you don't care, how are they ever going to care? I
Right.
know
We've
that
we've
was a bonus add-on just to
right.
make sure that we got the point across.
It's worth it, and we need people to take it seriously. We need people to realize that a little bit of inconvenience is much more important to risk than a lifetime of your child having to heal from what you could otherwise prevent them from experiencing. Prevention is so important because kids don't get a second chance to preserve their innocence. It matters. So, Mark, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for stepping out of your mad scientist cave to help the world, to unpack your knowledge, and to simplify it and make it actionable for people. We hope people take this seriously. We hope they do their own research. We hope they actually implement these guidelines that you're suggesting because it's so important and you don't get a second chance when it comes to protecting children.
And just to be playful to the audience, retire me. Show me that you can do it without my help. I would love that. I can go off and play. But right now I can't because this mission has got to have people show up and help it. And Kim, thank you so much for coming into my life, for believing me in enough to getting me involved in something that gives purpose to my life. And it allows me to go to bed at night knowing at least I'm trying to do something about a problem that fundamentally is about love. And I just want to say to the audience, America needs to get back to love. I don't mean that in a 60s way. We're a very cruel society, guys. A mistake should be forgiven. People should be able to overcome their past. We need to get back to some of the ideas that we used to have about how our society is built: ownership, love, dialogue.
We cannot let our differences divide us, and most importantly, we need to work together because divided we fall, and our kids don't stand a chance if we can't come together and create solutions.
That's right. So, Kim, thank you so much for this time. I am honored that you've allowed me to participate with you for the Veterans for Child Rescue and all the things we've discussed today. I just want to say to the parents, to end what we've discussed today, the preservation of innocence is probably the most important thing that a parent does because we protect the young brain and allow the young brain to mature and give the young brain the tools to discern. If you deprive that young brain of the tools of discernment and they lose their innocence, you have messed up a human being. So I really am excited to work with you so we prevent these outcomes. I want the very best for our children.